Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Kasper.
NFL Network, or I should say NFL.com, has a piece up that says 19 players and coaches with the most at stake in the second half. And no Packers are listed. No Packer player, no Packer coach listed on there. Okay. So I want to change it up, audible it, and rephrase the question. Do you think, or who do you think, and it doesn't have to be just players or coaches, we could throw the word out of persons. Who, from a Green Bay sense, is or has the most stake in the second half of this regular season? Players, coaches, maybe even front office. And I threw out a few different names. Obviously, two of the main people that are getting constantly talked about across national platforms, fan blogs, fan social, whatever. Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love. Those are the two most popular picks. Those are the two most popular people, hot topic, hot button items when we throw this type of question out there. It's going to be those two. And I get it. It's the head coach who happens to also be the offensive play caller. And what is the biggest disappointment maybe on this team so far? It's been the offense. And then it's the quarterback. But if we were to throw or add some more names to this, who would they be? Kind of think a little bit deeper into this, a little bit more outside the box, if you will. I'll throw some names out here. Okay? I'll throw a couple names out here. I think one coach that has a lot at stake for the second half for this stretch run is offensive line coach Luke Butkus. I am a believer that a lot of the Packers' offensive issues are stemming from the offensive line play. It's not to absolve Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, dropped passes from receivers. It's not to absolve any of that. But I am a believer that some of this stuff, whether it's certain play calls or rush throws or whatever, a lot of it is stemming from poor offensive line play, both in run blocking and in pass protection. And I know numbers say pass protection-wise, Green Bay's better than run blocking, but we just saw that Eagles game again. And I'm a believer, you don't have to agree with it, but it's my opinion, that Jordan Love was affected by the pass rush, even if they weren't getting home. I don't think he looked like a guy Monday night that did not trust his offensive line, that he was maybe feeling some ghosts or such. And you look at this group, and it's going to be a little bit harder. Now, I've seen some instances where, and it's really good. Pete Daughtry, who covers the Packers, he covers them for a long time, and PackersNews.com. And earlier on this morning, for on air, I was going through. He does a chat with some of the fans and questions, and one of the questions that he was talking about or answering, one listener or one reader threw out the comparison in 2010 when Nick Barnett went down with an injury. Desmond Bishop got into the starting lineup, and Desmond Bishop was special teams guy, great player, just was behind A.J. Hawk and Nick Barnett. Well, Nick Barnett got hurt, and then Desmond Bishop came in, and Desmond Bishop played better linebacker. It was actually kind of an upgrade. And you've got some people, and that was kind of the question thrown out there, could that be the case here with Sean Ryan going in for Elton Jenkins? It remains to be seen. Okay, Elton Jenkins is a former All-Pro lineman, first year at center. I think we would all, maybe not all, but I think a lot of us would say maybe the transition to center hasn't gone as smooth as initially thought. But could Sean Ryan come in and could it be a little bit better? Now, Sean Ryan isn't a center full-time by trade either. He has practiced at it. He has gotten some work at it. But is it possible? It's possible. But again, we don't know. And the other part in this thing, too, is going to be interesting to watch with this offensive line going forward is the communication from that offensive line. Elton Jenkins, especially going on the road, okay? You got silent counts, guard will tap the center and such. Elton Jenkins was still doing that as the center. So you've got him not only doing that, calling out assignments and such, now you're putting a little bit more on Sean Ryan. That's why I look at this is a coach, Luke Butkus. How he's going to get that offensive line to play at a high level with no Jenkins, with Sean Ryan coming in at center, but also just playing better football. Because I think a lot of the issues on offense is stemming from this, the inability to consistently run the ball well. Not as good as last year. That brings to the question is like how valuable was Josh Myers maybe at center? He's not the best center in the league for crying out loud, but the trickle-down effect from him because he leaves, you slide Jenkins over, and then they sign Aaron Banks. If they would have kept Myers and ran it back with this group, would they be better? I don't know. It's a what if. This is the group that has to play better. If this group plays better, consistently plays better, both in pass protection and in run blocking, the offense will play a lot better. Jordan Love will play a lot better, and Matt LaFleur might look a little bit better in some of his play calling. It starts from the ground up. It still starts in the trenches. This Packers offensive line has to play better going forward in the second half of this season. If I'm looking at some coaches who are looking at this stretch run here, maybe some jobs at stake, or looking for a better performance and such, I'd throw Luke Butkus in there. I'd throw Adam Stenavich in there because he is their former offensive line coach. You look at some of the offensive stuff, I'd throw him into there. I'd also throw the wide receivers coach. And we talked about it before. But their wide receivers coach, Ryan Mahaffey. Last year, issues with drops. Drops. Now you got injuries this year, and I get it. It's you really can't. That's not his fault. And I don't know how much I fault him for Bo Melton playing more than like a Malik Heath. I think that was more of a LaFleur, maybe even a upper decision and such. But it's like we still had a couple drops, a couple big time drops in that. Are we seeing growth? Are we seeing progression from the wide receivers? That's the question to ask. And I think, from Matthew Golden, have we seen the production that maybe we were hoping or even expecting this year? No. But again, is that because of coaching or is it because of production, lack of production or lack of opportunities? But I'd throw those names in there along with maybe a little Matt LaFleur. Other players, I would look at guys like a Luke Musgrave, who, and again, the player one is hard to kind of, for some players, it's kind of hard to say, okay, who are the players with the most at stake down this stretch run when they're maybe not the quarterback or the main target and such, because a lot of it is dependent on the opportunities they're going to get. But I would look at this as Luke Musgrave has a lot at stake down the stretch run here from a financial standpoint, maybe from a job standpoint, maybe not necessarily for next year, but after his contract's done. If he could go in this stretch run and put up some great numbers and showcase the receiving threat that we were all kind of hoping that we would see from him being a second-round pick, the guy that stretches the field, the guy that goes up the seam in that, this is an opportunity for him with no Tucker Kraft, and the offense definitely needs it. But is that mostly him, or is he going to get those opportunities? I'd throw a guy like Dontavian Wicks for a lot of the same reasons. Throw a little Romeo Doubs in there, too, because he's entering his final year. He's got a lot at stake in terms of moolah contract status. Dontavian Wicks, he also has something at stake. Could he be the odd man out? If Green Bay decides to keep Romeo Doubs, maybe Dontavian Wicks is the odd man out. I don't know. But those are just some of the players. I'd throw same thing for defensively, maybe like a Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt. What's at stake? Cash. Cold, hard cash money contracts. And I'd also throw a little Carrington Valentine in there, too. Because is it crazy to say that Carrington Valentine right now is the top corner on Green Bay? I don't think so. I don't think it's crazy at all. Could you make the case that another person that has a lot at stake in this stretch run, second half of the season, could you make a case Goody does a little bit too? Now, I would put, if I were to rank him, I'd probably put him down fairly low. I don't think Goody's going anywhere. Okay, I don't. The Parsons trade, it's working out. Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs, nope. And depending on how the rest of this season goes and how, the results of this and how they win or lose, Parsons trade will be looked upon, and that'll be talked about the most. But right now, it sure looks like the Hobbs and the Aaron Banks signings were not good moves by Goody. And since we were just talking about the offensive line, they invested a lot of money into Aaron Banks. And that's the thing is, like, Hobbs and Banks don't necessarily have a lot at stake in the second half. Maybe so, and just like, guys, you got to play up to that contract. You got to play at a higher level. You got to be better. First of all, get healthy, but you got to be better. That's what's at stake here. But considering their contract, they're probably going to be back next year. And right now, they look like bad deals. I don't want to. I know some people are already throwing out comparisons like, oh my God, worst free agent signing since like Martellus Bennett, Joe Johnson, stuff like that. Let's get through this first. Let's get through the first season, and then we can kind of bring that up. But maybe you can kind of throw him in there too. Heck, stretch run. If you want to talk about guys with a lot at stake that improve their stocks, none other than Jeff Hafley. I mean, in this, Jeff Hafley's stock is rising. And if this defense continues to do what they're doing, I mean, to hold the Eagles to just 10 points, and you look at the schedule upcoming after the Giants especially, games against the Lions, division games, Ravens, Broncos. If this Packers defense performs incredibly well against those teams, Hafley's stock is going to continue to rise. So, in that essence, he has a lot at stake during the second half as well. But if we just kind of pose the question, who's got the most at stake to maybe not get fired or not get let go, I think you point a lot to the offensive side in this thing. And right now, if I were at this point, because I don't know what the next 8, 7, 8, 9, whatever, how many weeks are left, and if they get to the postseason, I don't know how it's going to play out. But right now, on November 13th, I don't think LaFleur gets fired at the end of the season. If I were to be asked that right now and be like, okay, end of the season, right now, at this moment, does he get fired? I would say no. But I could be wrong. But I could see changes. Very similar to last year where, okay, this team could not get any pressure in the defensive line, so what'd they do? They got a new defensive line coach. Okay, this team, offensive line stunk. That might be a little dramatic. Not that great this year. They took a step back. I could see a change at offensive line coach. I could see a change at wide receiver coach. And to bring up Pete Daughtry's chat again, and he brings up a good point. If we rewind it to the beginning of the season, in the offseason, the whole Ed policy is not giving us an extension to both Goody and LaFleur, and at that time, before the season started, they had 2 years left. But he also said, I don't believe in coaches coaching with just 1 year or that lame duck status. So, it sure seems like then there's going to be two options on the table after this season's over with that Ed policy has to decide. And we'll keep it with the head coach side. He either, like Pete said, maybe LaFleur gets a 3 to 4 year extension, or he's let go. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of middle ground. Because I think if he gets a 1 year extension after this season, it's like, okay, we're gonna give you a 1 year extension, so it's 2 years left on your deal. But if it's a 1 year extension, we know what that means. You got to prove it. We know you're 1 year under your contract, but we're going to give you a 1 year extension. That's essentially like giving a player a 1 year deal, a 1 year prove it deal. You sign your coach to a 1 year extension, that's the same thing. We're going to give you another year. You need to prove it before we give you a long-term extension. So I guess there's kind of three options here. And three options would tell us a lot about what Ed policy is thinking about for Matt LaFleur if we just kind of focus on Matt LaFleur. But you could say the same thing about Goody, too, if he were to do the same thing. Fired, 1 year extension, prove it. I'm kind of on the fence. 3 to 4 years, you're committed. I feel like it's going to be 3 to 4 or they're going to cut ties. I don't know if there's going to be that middle ground between it. And I think a lot is going to depend on how the rest of the season shapes out, how it continues to unfold. As long as there's no major injuries to major players in that, how the Packers finish this season, if they get to the postseason, how far they advance to the postseason is going to dictate a lot of the futures for this. And the thing is, too, remember, they don't have, for the next 2 years, any first-round picks to come in and kind of help them out on the offensive side or maybe getting a corner in the first round of the draft. They don't have that. Can't bank on that. And we know the salary cap next year, tight. That's why I think you have a lot of people, a lot of fans, and maybe even the Packers themselves that put a ton of pressure on this particular ball club for this year because it's going to look a lot different next year. And then before he got hurt, there was probably a really good chance that they were going to have to lock up Tucker Kraft to a massive extension entering his final year. Now that he's hurt, maybe you could kind of pause that a little bit. So, this is going to be, I think, as a fan, I think this is going to be kind of a stressful last second half stretch run here. Because there's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching with division teams, NFC teams. But not only that, a lot of angst watching your own team because I don't think we're going to know what to expect. What kind of performance are we going to go in there and expect? And it's going to be like that every single week for the rest of these 2, 4, 6, 8 games. And after this Giants one, not to overlook them because you factor in that new head coach energy, new starting quarterback energy, regardless of who they are. It's a thing, and a lot of teams play off that. This is going to be an interesting stretch run here. Giants, Vikings, Lions on a short week, Bears, Broncos in Denver, Bears, Ravens, Vikings. How many more wins do you feel like this team's going to get to in the second half? In those final 8 games, what do you think that record's going to be? And what do you think it has to be to get into the postseason? Can they get to double digit? They're sitting there at 5-3-1. Is there 5 wins in this final 8 weeks to get to at least 10? And then maybe finish with a 10-6-1 record? Would that be, 17? Is there 5? Okay, Giants. I'm not going to bear the headline. I'm picking Green Bay to win this weekend. Can you get both against the Vikings? That's 3. I mean, what's your best bet? And then trying to sweep the Bears to get to 5? And that's losses against Ravens, Broncos, and Lions? Is there 5 wins to get to double-digit wins? You'd think, but look at what we've been witnessing here lately.